Today, we are in a situation of major conflicts around the globe. These conflicts must constitute a particular priority for the Secretary General. Engaged, present, probing, listening, seeking opportunities to suggest a way out, all recognizing that in the end the decision will be on the part of the parties in conflict and the major players. I especially have in mind the conflicts in Ukraine, Gaza, the Great Lakes region of Africa, Sudan, Iran, the Horn of Africa, the Sahel. One of the most disturbing features of the situations I refer to is the fact that innocent civilians, particularly women and children, are disproportionately affected by these conflicts. The Secretary General won't have the power to say, let this be and it shall be. No. But the Secretary General must engage with all the parties in the conflict, all the key actors in the situation, be part of the solution, and I hope it will be possible for the Secretary General to make some suggestions that will prove useful and open the way to a lasting solution.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Please take your seats. Last welcoming at the door after summer break. Good to see many ambassadors back. Welcome. I hope you all had a good summer break. But in this house, we never have a break. Therefore, I call to order the informal meeting to conduct an interactive dialogue with Mr. Olara Otunnu, candidate for the position of the United Nations Secretary General. Today's interactive dialogue marks a critical step in the selection and appointment process for the next Secretary General, while also coming at a pivotal moment for the United Nations. The person we select will be more than the face of this institution. Our choice will send a powerful message about who we are and whether we truly serve all 8 billion people of the world in all their diversity. The multilateral system, with the United Nations at its center, is under unprecedented political and financial pressure, from a deepening liquidity crisis to fundamental principles of the United Nations Charter being put into question. The next Secretary General will be entrusted not only with navigating these challenges, but also with advancing essential reforms to ensure the United Nations is fit for the future. At the same time, the world needs the United Nations more than ever, and it needs a Secretary General who can provide strong, principled and effective leadership across all 3 pillars: peace and security, development and human rights. These interactive dialogues, which I convene in line with General Assembly Resolution 79/327, offer a unique opportunity for candidates to present their vision for the future of this organization, and for member states and civil society to ask questions and interact directly with candidates. The interactive dialogues are essential to ensuring a transparent and inclusive selection and appointment process, while underlining the important role of the General Assembly. I encourage you to make full use of this opportunity, and I thank all candidates for their active participation, member states and civil society for their questions and engagement. But these dialogues do not end in this chamber. They are also an opportunity for people around the world, the very people the United Nations serves, to listen, to engage, and to hold this process to the highest standards. For this decision does not only concern a few, but all of us in and outside the United Nations. and who look to this institution to reflect the principles and values it champions. As reflected in my letters dated 4th March, April 15th, and August 6, 2026, the dialogue will begin with an introduction by the candidate of their vision and priorities for up to 10 minutes, followed by an interactive exchange. Each interactive dialogue will last up to 3 hours. The interactive exchange will take place in 2 segments, as we have practiced many times before. We will begin with an 1.5-hour discussion focused on leadership abilities, experience, and skills needed to lead a strong organization that is fit for the future. Following this, we will move into the second segment, which will focus on the 3 pillars of the United Nations: peace and security, development, and human rights. In line with revitalization resolution, civil society representatives will be invited to pose questions in each of the 2 thematic segments. Before proceeding to hear the presentation of the vision of candidate, I would like to inform members on how to inscribe to speak in the 2 thematic segments. Delegations wishing to speak can register their wish to speak by pressing the microphone button. Please do not press the microphone button yet. I will announce when delegation will be asked to press the microphone button at the beginning of the first segment. Member states speaking on behalf of a group are invited to approach the list of speakers table and will be given priority. Delegations can speak only once in each segment, whether on behalf of a group or in national capacity. In the second segment, priority will be given to delegations that did not have an opportunity to speak during the first segment. Now, I invite Mr. Otunnu to present his vision. Please, Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Excellence, Madame la Présidente.
Excellencies, Madam President of the General Assembly, distinguished ambassadors, esteemed delegates, members of civil society, Madam President, I thank you for organizing this dialogue and for giving me the opportunity to engage with you. I would like to thank the Secretary General as well as the staff of the United Nations for their dedication and service to the organization. Our tribute to them is all the more poignant today on the anniversary of the deaths of 22 United Nations staff in the August 2003 bombing of the UN offices in Baghdad. Among those killed were 2 of my dear friends, Sergio Vieira de Mello of Brazil and Nadia Younis of Egypt. And one of the survivors, Mr. Salim Lone of Kenya, is with us today in this very chamber. I also wish to salute my colleagues and fellow candidates for their commitment and their offer to serve the United Nations. Madam President, in the UN Charter, there is a focus on this solemn commitment. We, the people of the United Nations, are resolved to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war, to reaffirm our faith in fundamental human rights, in the dignity and worth of the human person, to ensure the equality of rights between men and women, as well as between great and small nations, to establish the conditions for justice, and to promote social progress, as well as to ensure better standards of life in larger freedom. It is upon the bedrock of this collective pledge that the three pillars of the UN's work are built. That is to say, peace and security, human rights, and sustainable development. We must continue to work substantively on all of these pillars. The United Nations is the only body that represents all of humanity. It was founded in the aftermath of a brutal global war and against the backdrop of the Holocaust to promote international cooperation and to foster the settlement of international disputes by peaceful means. At no time has this mission been more essential than today. We are living at a time of profound upheaval and radical changes marked by grave threats to international peace and security. There's growing fragmentation of the global economy and deep economic fractures. There's a wavering consensus on the fundamental principles of human rights. Crucial issues linked to climate and environment are arising at a time when autonomous systems and artificial intelligence may evolve to dominate the human race. And yet, with rapid advances in the field of AI, together with other major advances and profound transformations in science and technology, this may lead to a golden age in human history, a time in which hitherto incurable diseases could be prevented or cured, a time to lift billions of people out of poverty through financial and digital inclusion. It is against this backdrop of hope and of great promise, as well as of growing threats, that the United Nations once again is called upon to fulfill its historic charge.
Even though we must keep our view firmly on the three pillars of UN action, from time to time the flow of events will shape priorities and emphasis. Today we are in a situation of major conflicts around the globe. These conflicts must constitute a particular priority for the Secretary General. Engaged, present, probing, listening, seeking opportunities to suggest a way out, all recognizing that in the end the decision will be on the part of the parties in conflict and the major players. I especially have in mind the conflicts in Ukraine, Gaza, the Great Lakes region of Africa, Sudan, Iran, the Horn of Africa, the Sahel. One of the most disturbing features of the situations I refer to is the fact that innocent civilians, particularly women and children, are disproportionately affected by these conflicts. It is one of the reasons why we cannot stand still. We must do everything within our powers to act. Over the years, we have continued to emphasize the importance of human rights. In the words of the Charter, fundamental human rights and the dignity and worth of the human person. These are the words of the Charter. And we must return to the basics in terms of the regime of human rights of which I speak, the basics as postulated in the Charter. For a human rights approach to be credible and enjoy broad legitimacy, every effort must be made to guard against politicization, instrumentalization, and the intrusion of ideology in our pursuit of human rights. There should be greater sensitivity to different cultural perspectives and social norms. The UN must better understand and acknowledge the deep traditions and cultures of human dignity, respect, and social cohesion that exist in many societies. This, in part, will be my approach for rebuilding consensus on the issue of human rights back to the basics. For the United Nations to discharge the responsibilities set out in the Charter, let me say this clearly and simply. Reform is no longer an optional choice. It is an imperative. Without it, the institution is at grave risk. We cannot continue to do business as usual. To do so would be a grave mistake and error of judgment. Key to the organization's success is its legitimacy, effectiveness, and efficiency. And therefore, the reform initiative subsumed under UN 80 must not only be continued as a priority of the Secretary General, but be a continuous process that becomes part of the DNA, the outlook, the culture of the organization. Every organization that wishes to be at the cutting edge, vibrant and viable, must consistently bring review and constantly. Madam President, as Secretary General, I would put priority on harnessing the incredible force which is being unleashed by artificial intelligence to make this a force for good, for the entire world community, with access and benefit for all. I have, over the last 5 years, been based in northern Uganda. And when the calls and messages asking me to consider to be a candidate for this position came, I was in northern Uganda. What was I doing there? Many of you will recall this is a part of the world that was radically destroyed, collapsed, as a result of over 20 years of the LRA war. So I've been engaged with others in the enterprise of rebuilding, of restoring, of resuscitating a terribly broken society. I have some idea what peace building means at the ground level. And I believe that United Nations should make it its business to enunciate policies and standards from New York and Geneva and Vienna, but also follow to see the impact on the ground at the national and community level. And finally, Madam President, what I offer, if I'm given the opportunity to be Secretary General, is broad and very deep experience of working across all the three pillars of the UN. It is a track record of building consensus and offering innovative solutions in times of deadlock and crisis. And I would just, Madam President, please end on this note because this inspires me. It is St. Francis of Assisi. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. I would embrace this role with the same passion, commitment that I've shown in every leadership position I've had here. I thank you very much, Madam President.
I thank Mr. Otunnu.
Distinguished members of the press, good evening, and thank you so much for joining us. It's my honor to present to you Ambassador Olara Otunnu, candidate for Secretary General of the United Nations. He has just set out his vision to the General Assembly, and now he's here to take your questions. Ambassador Otunnu.
Ladies and gentlemen of the media, before I say anything, may I please introduce you to our Prime Minister Emeritus, Dr. Ruakana Rugunda. He's one of the most eminent leaders in our country at the international level as well. He served as ambassador here, Prime Minister many years, and is now senior presidential envoy and the one who is leading our lobbying effort. We are also very honored to have here Ambassador Kakonge, who is the Uganda ambassador to the United States, based in Washington, D.C. And earlier I told you how touched we are that Mr. Salim Lone, who is one of the survivors of that horrific attack in Baghdad in 2003, is today here with us on this very poignant occasion. So thank you. I'm happy to be with you, and I'll take your questions.
Go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Damilola. I write for Pass Blue. My first question, there's been a lot of speculations around why you're just coming out now. Not only have you been an institution within the UN for a long time ago, the last time you had any position at the UN was 2005. Not only are you 2 decades late, so to say, for this race, but also you joined the race itself when the process had progressed substantially. If you could talk about that, would be great. Thank you.
Well, just 2 things. I hope that my breadth and depth of experience, covering some 4 decades, covering all 3 pillars of the United Nations, meaning peace and security, on which I've worked in the Security Council as Under Secretary General, but also when I was president of International Peace Academy, now IPI, my work on development and my work on human rights. Human rights, together with Prime Minister Dr. Ruakana Rugunda, we cut our teeth in the struggle against the rule of Idi Amin in Uganda. So all my adult life, I have been engaged in the promotion of human rights. So I hope that that breadth and depth of experience is what the UN needs today. More than that, some of you may know that in the leadership positions I've occupied here at the UN and elsewhere, my trademark has been two things: forging consensus, building consensus, even when things are very contentious. Two examples you may recall. One, the Otunnu formula, which is now being used since 1981 to elect the Secretary General. I was able to put that together in 1981. Two, in this very hall, in this very hall, the General Assembly, 1983, you may recall in October, in the middle of the General Assembly, we had the Grenada crisis. The government was overthrown, new forces took over, the president was killed, and we had two delegations turn up here to represent Grenada. At that time, I was the chair of the Credentials Committee, and it fell to my lot to work out something to get the General Assembly out of a 3-week paralysis that had befallen the General Assembly. Later again, when I was Under Secretary General working on the issue of children and armed conflict, previous to my pioneering work, the Security Council preoccupation was essentially about the security of states. Nothing wrong with that. That's what the Charter had provided. It fell to my lot to forge a consensus, to build a common position within the Security Council, to incorporate the most vulnerable segment of our population, children, in situations of conflict, and women and other innocent civilians. That machinery is now being expanded to incorporate very important provision for protection, for enforcement, and I'm very happy about that. So really, I bring that experience. And now just you may have heard, when I began receiving calls and messages from around the globe suggesting that I should consider entering this race, I was not in New York. I was not in London or Paris. I was not even in Kampala. I was deep in the womb of the countryside in northern Uganda. Why? Because as you may remember, very few places suffered as northern Uganda as a result of 20 years of war and encampment. This is the place that you remember the Under Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs once called the worst forgotten crisis in the world. So for the last 5 years or so, I've been working together with others, with the community, building a non-partisan, across-the-board movement to restore, to rebuild, to resuscitate this once progressive, dynamic society, which is now a shadow of its former self. So I would hope that this body of experience, which is probably unusual in their breadth and depth, might be useful for the UN and the international community at this particular moment. Let me say also, when I say to the members, the UN can no longer bear the full burden of what has been placed on it. The UN should look to share, to partner with others, especially regional groups. When I was at the UN and when I was at the International Peace Academy, part of what I did with various regional groups was building that partnership. So I would hope that when we are looking for a Secretary General who is active, who is engaged, who knows the permanent members, knows the membership, has actually had a track record of building consensus and proposing innovative solutions in difficult situations, I would hope that members might have a favorable look at my own background. So that is the answer to the questions you asked.
Your Excellency, also the UN right now is going through its worst financial crisis in decades. You've talked about innovative things that you've done in the past. What new solutions might you have in solving this perennial problem for the UN right now?
First, Madam, I have said that the enterprise of reform today at the UN is not an optional choice. Where the UN finds itself today, this is an imperative. We cannot continue with business as usual. The UN is at risk. We will make a grave error of judgment if we continued as is. But the purpose of doing fundamental reforms at the UN is precisely to strengthen an institution that is needed in the world. You heard all the questions from member states, showing the role that they see the UN playing, what they expect from the UN. And for the UN to play the role expected of member states and what the Charter provides needs to be a legitimate UN, a credible UN, a UN whose culture and method of work builds its legitimacy and impact. So that is what I hope that the reform I'm proposing will do, not kill multilateralism, but rebuild it, reposition it, strengthen it, create more impact on the ground so that we have what I would call the UN of service.
Thank you very much. If you could introduce yourself and then pose a question.
Yes, my name is Mouna Outoul. I'm with Al-Quds Al-Arabi. Vous voulez que je vous pose la question en français or English?
You may speak in English. I'm happy to hear English or French, as you prefer.
We have no translation.
I will answer in English. It's okay.
Okay.
No, it's okay.
You said during the interactive dialogue that the suffering in Gaza is becoming unacceptable. So my question for you is, what is your concrete plan if you get elected, as a Secretary General, to promote genuine reconciliation between Palestinians and Israelis, especially among younger generations, in order to build lasting peace based on the principles of the United Nations Charter? And thank you, sir.
Absolutely. I cited Gaza as an example of a conflict that we cannot stand by and watch unfold. It is a major conflict with major geopolitical implications, but above all, with unbelievable impact on ordinary, innocent people. So the Secretary General needs to be involved, even as the Secretary General recognizes that the decision-making at the end of the day may not rely on the Secretary General. But the Secretary General must be engaged, must visit, must talk to the parties in conflict, must see opportunities where he or she might suggest something useful, and must continue to highlight this situation for the world to see. So the role of the Secretary General is very important in trying to see what can be done with the key actors, the parties in conflict. He or she cannot do much on their own. But if they're involved, they're listening patiently, they're probing, they're suggesting, something may give way. That is one, ending the conflict in Gaza. But secondly, we cannot stop there, because the issue in that region, the issue of Palestine and the Palestinians have been with us for a long time. So we must proceed right away to go deeper and find ways of generating a lasting solution. That's where we must go. And again, what does this entail? the Secretary General won't have the power to say, let this be and it shall be. No. But the Secretary General must engage with all the parties in the conflict, all the key actors in the situation, be part of the solution, and I hope it will be possible for the Secretary General to make some suggestions that will prove useful and open the way to a lasting solution.
I will allow you a follow-up question, but if there are others, please make it quick.
Sorry, what were you saying? Go ahead.
Thank you very much for your answer. I'm just asking, is there a specific method of action, specific plan to achieve the goals that you are talking about?
No. From this side, I cannot say that. But one Secretary General, by being engaged, talking to the parties in conflict, listening to what they are saying, getting a sense of where they are and where things are blocked, possibilities then may present themselves that the Secretary General can be helpful. But from where I am, I can't say to you, A, B, C, D is what we shall do. But we begin by the Secretary General being intimately engaged, listening to the parties in conflict, probing and seeking opportunities where the UN can be helpful. Merci.
Thank you very much. You have?
Yes, if I could, I work with Damalola at Pass Blue. I wanted to ask you about the fact that President Museveni has endorsed you when, in fact, you have been in the opposition party. If you could explain those politics, because there is a lot of information out in the social media that may be misinformation or disinformation. Thank you.
President Museveni and I know each other well. We go back a long time, together with my brother, the Prime Minister. We were engaged together in the struggle against the Idi Amin regime. Subsequently, our paths diverged politically, including with my brother, the Prime Minister. And indeed, within Uganda, there are important points of divergence that needs to be talked through. I have myself, in the context of Uganda, it may not be of much interest to you, but I've always said in the context of Uganda that we need to engage in a very independent, thoroughgoing, truth-telling exercise concerning some of the dark episodes in our history. Two, I have said, we need from there to have acknowledgement, but we acknowledge what each of us may have contributed to those dark episodes. And that will then liberate us to climb onto the hill of national reconciliation. It's not for purpose of retribution, not for purpose of revenge, but in order to achieve genuine national reconciliation. And that remains a discussion which I continue to have with Mr. Museveni and with other leaders in Uganda. And that indeed, by the way, is my position not only with regard to Uganda, but in other situations where I've been involved, situations of conflict, of dark episodes in the history of countries, I've called for the same thing. And I have advocated the same thing in my own country.
What do you say to all the people who think that a woman should be the next Secretary General?
The United Nations should be a United Nations of inclusion. All aspects of inclusion, whether in terms of geography, gender, culture, faiths, all inclusion. It should be an inclusive institution. And all considerations along those lines should be taken into account. They are legitimate, they are important. But at the end of the day, it is for members of the Security Council and then the general membership of the UN, when they put everything on the weighing machine, they put everything to say at this particular moment in the history of the UN and the world, this is what we think we need, this is what is a good fit, this is what we decide upon. That is for the Security Council members and the general membership to decide. But these are all very important, legitimate, and much appreciated considerations taken alongside other considerations.